I think you should sleep on the couch. Ouch. That hurts. And it goes deep. A wound that has existed within me since before I can remember has been pressed upon. A belief that I'm not doing the right thing. I'm not doing enough. I'm not good enough. Her words hit me so hard that I was stopped in my tracks, momentarily silenced, a mirror turned toward me so that I could see plainly all that had been occurring. As we put our son to bed, the hot flush of emotion passing through me, my mind desperately searching for some kind of action to take. How would I respond? On the surface, there didn't seem to be much choice available to me. I could either comply with this request or resist it. What I chose to do was neither of these. But before I go there, allow me to give you a bit of context. The irony cuts deep. I write about presence and attunement. I teach men how to show up as fathers and partners. I advocate for emotional intelligence and resilience as an essential foundation for a life well lived. Yet here I am, emotionally barricaded behind the pressures of running two businesses in a silent withdrawal. It is something intimately familiar, a pattern that I see emerge again and again. The very patterns I help others break have reasserted themselves in my home. This is my confession as a present father who still messes up. Despite all my practices, all my writing and reflection about fatherhood as mindful engagement, I still fall prey to one of the oldest habits in the book. When pressure mounts, I close off. I go silent. I go distant. I call it stonewalling. And when my attention is brought to its grip on me, I know it by the heaviness that I sense in the musculature of my face. My cheeks are drawn downwards. There's a tightness in my jaw and my lips. My head remains lowered and my eyes avoid making contact with my beloved. In this mode, I know only one thing: getting shit done in order to avoid anything else. When I'm resourced, I notice this early and can take some action to interrupt my habitual tendency. Something like taking a walk, going for a solo coffee, doing some movement, calling a friend. When my resources are spent, like in the situation I'm talking about here, the pattern becomes far more destructive. The rupture this time began with compounding health concerns, coupled with financial stress. We had just returned from 6 months of traveling on the other side of the world, half of which in my birth country, Australia, and the other half between Bali and Thailand. The first 4 months went incredibly well, far better than we could have expected traveling with a 1-year-old boy. But then our luck shifted. Towards the end of our time in Bali, my partner fell ill. Then my son immediately after that. And then for the next couple of months, this would become a consistent pattern. Within 6 weeks, we had visited the emergency medical center in Bali and twice decided to go to the Thai hospital emergency department throughout the night. My son had Bali belly, fever on at least 3 occasions, a relentless cough that lasted well over a month, fractured his wrist and was left cast-bound, and caught a gastrointestinal bug that had him vomiting for several days. And my partner spent at least half that time sick herself. On top of that, I've not even yet mentioned the innumerable traveling challenges we were confronted with in the same period of time. An B&B that did not exist, a hotel that refused entry and refund, and a couple of weeks with no place to stay, just to name a few. All of that to say, the pressure that I felt upon me as a father was significant. Between attending to my son's daily rhythms, caring for both of them in their illnesses, making swift and necessary travel decisions, and managing my ongoing workload, I felt like I was in survival mode. Each day there was a problem to be solved, a battle to be waged, and across time, the stone walls that keep me safe in times of war crept up. When we'd finally returned home to Portugal, I felt more ready to lower these defensive walls, yet they remained stubbornly unyielding as habit had firmly taken hold. Here entered the second wave of stress. Over the 6 months, I had dialed back my business operations to a minimum to enjoy our time away as a family. I used the space to delve into creative redirection of how I would work moving forward. I listened deeply to what the world was asking of me, and it was thus that the early inspiration for Zen fatherhood was formed. So here I now was, home in Portugal, my financial and energetic resources depleted, my business slowed to a near halt, and yet a bubbling wave of excitement for this renewed sense of purpose alive within me. I got a bit carried away. I placed immense expectations upon myself, set painful deadlines for no real reason, and gave what little I had left to initiating this business. I put foundations and structures in place that I would continue to show up fully as a father, allocating generous time each day for play, exploration, and learning. I started caring for myself again, re-engaging with my physical practice to strengthen both my body and my resolve. But I neglected one of the most important aspects of my life. I took for granted my relationship with my beloved, assuming she understood all of which was unspoken and undone. I had forgotten her. The signs were all there if I had been willing to see them. Shorter responses, less eye contact and touch, declining physical affection. The connection between us that used to flow effortlessly became stilted and formal. We moved around each other like polite strangers sharing temporary accommodation, occasionally pausing long enough to disagree about something. Each time that I disappear behind my emotional walls, my partner experiences it as rejection. Not necessarily something she did, but of her entire presence in my life. The irony is that in trying to handle things on my own, I communicate that we aren't truly partners at all. What I perceive as taking responsibility by shouldering burdens alone, she experiences being shut out of our shared life. What makes this particularly painful for both of us is how it mimics my partner's childhood experiences with her own father. With each withdrawal, I inadvertently reinforce her deepest relational wound, despite knowing better. As someone who stands for presence in all things, my silence represents an absent contradiction in our partnership and my sense of who I am. The longer it stretches, the more difficult the eventual reconnection becomes. And this time was certainly the longest and most difficult. It was only when things truly ruptured that I finally became aware of how I had been failing to show up for her. That night, as she told me to go sleep on the couch, might have been a moment where I doubled down, the weight of relational stress on top of everything else leading me to fight or flee. Instead, I chose to let go. Not of her, but of my compulsion to defend myself. Would you be open to talking about this? She was, and so we made our way downstairs to talk. Before we said anything, I took a moment to center myself. I knew this conversation was going to be hard. I needed to show up unguarded and authentic, and the only way I could muster this was to feel secure within myself. I felt my sit bones beneath my body, my feet firmly in contact with the earth. I connected with my breath and lengthened the exhalation. I postured myself in upright alignment. It was clear that she was understandably closed off to what I had to say, the excuses I might make, wary of how I might convince her back from her position. When I spoke, it was my opportunity to be openly vulnerable with her in a way that felt impossible over the past months. I took responsibility. I shared with her what I was feeling. I shared with her how much I had struggled in the months. I shared with her the pressures I was experiencing. I shared with her the binding situation I now found myself in. And I gave voice to how I had neglected to show up for her, apologizing from the depth of my being, committing myself to shifting things to be different by making promises of time and attention toward flourishing of our relationship. The conversation was both beautiful and painful. Of course, a relationship exists in a dynamic. The focal point of blame cannot be truly placed upon one person or the other. There's an interpersonal dynamic at play that leads to things falling apart. For the purposes of this essay, however, I will only share things from my side. It was only by me opening myself and owning my part of the unfolding dynamic that allowed her to have space to share how she was feeling, her fears, her struggles, the ways she had not shown up as she would have liked, and her own commitments to changing her behavior. By coming together in the way that we did, not only began to heal the rupture, but I have a sense that our relationship is on a trajectory to a new strength. On the surface, one might merely think it manipulative to form strategies for engaging with one's partner. The simple fact of the matter, however, is that many of us men lack the communication skills, emotional awareness, and confidence in who we are to engage in the necessary conversations that we might deep down desire. So whilst these steps that follow lay out the framework for how you might conduct yourself, they can only be built on a foundation of a true desire to make amends, and both an unconditional love and positive regard for the other, no matter the resulting outcome. Also, to make clear, whilst these steps may seem radically simple, when you feel wronged or misunderstood, emotions are running high, and the pride of one's ego is threatened, maintaining your composure is likely going to be immensely difficult. Nevertheless, a framework to lean on in these moments can be incredibly useful. Based on what I have come to learn over the years, both through my studies and validated through my own direct experience, I propose the 4-step repair. Tune in, acknowledge, apologize, commit. Tune in. This is the most vital part of the process. We cannot attend to relational disharmony if we are not even aware of its existence. It asks us to slow down long enough and pause to notice what parts of our lives and relationships are constrained. It involves noticing in both the visceral sense and the observant sense. It means paying attention and listening both with our ears and our bodies. Do you notice that your body tightens or closes or hardens or disappears when your partner says or does something in particular? Do you notice the way your partner reacts to your own words and actions when the distance between you increases? The earlier we are able to pick up on these cues, the sooner we can attend to the situation before things escalate. Though, even if you only notice when things truly rupture, the information you gain from the context within which it occurs can help you to tune in better next time. In my particular scenario, whilst it was only when things ruptured that I acted, if I'm completely honest, I could see the writing on the wall for many weeks prior. I could feel myself close off when certain subjects came to discussion, when my partner would say something in particular. I'd even voiced some of my experience with trusted friends. So whilst I was tuned in, I had neglected to act upon what I noticed with her directly. Acknowledge. The biggest barrier for many men, and I include myself here, is to open a conversation whilst not fully understanding the situation or having a solution readily available. So we sit on our hands, waiting for the right moment to bring the subject up, and all the while the situation continues to grow and wreak havoc beneath the surface. Another thing is that acknowledgement can be initiated by either person in the relationship. So why can't she be the one to bring it up? Or if she isn't saying anything, maybe she doesn't think it's a problem. Or finally, if she does decide to bring it up, we might still close ourselves off, avoiding to see or acknowledge the situation. The unknown is scary. In opening a conversation like this, it is entirely uncertain how things will go or how things will end, with the stakes raised even higher if there are kids involved. Many men simply choose the certainty of the way things are. At least we know that kind of discomfort and disharmony. We know what it feels like. But if you were to imagine your life in 10 years' time, what would your relationship look like if this rupture were to perpetuate? Is there still a relationship? Equally imagine, what could things look like if the constraints that prevent open and mutually supportive communication were lifted? What might your relationship look and feel like? As you're hearing this, my words may be directing your attention towards some particular discordance between you and your partner. Could you imagine approaching them to give voice to what you notice or what you feel without having any solution or follow-up? In my circumstance, this meant calling out how I had been responding to her, how it was out of alignment with the kind of person I considered myself to be. It meant sharing how I felt: ashamed, angry, sad, stressed, burdened, dissociated. Although, to be clear, as I waded into the conversation, I didn't really know what I felt, what it was in relation to, and I definitely had no notion on hand as to how I would fix things. It takes both courage and curiosity to go there, but the lightness and ease that exists on the other side is invaluable. Are you willing to face your discomfort on behalf of those you love? Apologize. Any relational dynamic is the product of two parts. The blame rarely, if ever, rests on the shoulders of one person or the other. Each contributes to the unfolding dynamic in their own way, either through their words and actions or through the absence of word and action. When we choose to apologize, we are not necessarily accepting the fault or giving in to the other. We are taking responsibility for the part we played in the situation as it stands. We fully own what we have said or done, or not said or done, to contribute to the perpetuation of this relational pattern. For the most part, most of us never learn the art of apology. "I'm sorry" doesn't generally cut it. A good apology, when it comes from the heart, is a means for deeper connection. First, we must recognize how our behavior has affected the other person, physically, mentally, emotionally. But the real piece here is that it must not be caveated with explanations or excuses. Then apologize and request their forgiveness. Even if you do not agree with the other person, prioritizing emotional restoration is the only way communication and your life together can move forward. This does not mean abandoning yourself or disregarding your own feelings, but neither does it mean stubbornly expecting them to conform to your expectations. A relationship is far better positioned to navigate conflict and difference when communication between partners is open. So I wonder, do you apologize when circumstance calls for it? With what kind of attention are your apologies given? When I offered myself through apology to my partner, the weight of the situation really bore down upon me. My voice cracked, my tears built up in my eyes. But when it was delivered, I immediately felt a light relief passing over me. A true apology is healing for the giver as it is for the receiver. Commit. All that has been said so far will land differently if you follow up with a commitment to change. The key to a good commitment is that it is specific and actionable. Vague promises like "I'll do better" generally do not create the necessary sense of trust and security to truly move forward. The best kind of commitment involves input and feedback from both partners in the relationship, and likewise asks some kind of intentional change from both. The disruption of a dysfunctional relationship dynamic and the movement towards something better is far more likely to be successful in the long run if you are both aligned in the direction of change. This also means you can both hold each other accountable to the commitment, when inevitably one or the other slips and the familiar habit threatens to return. In my circumstance, my commitment to my partner involved a reprioritization of my time. We built in intentional time each day to check in with each other, as well as weekly and monthly routines that support the proactive resolution of issues and encourage a deepening of our connection with each other. We now share distraction-free time together whilst my son takes his nap. Friday mornings involve getting a babysitter whilst we go take a walk and go for a coffee. Full moons are a time for us to connect more deeply. We used to do this kind of thing regularly when we were just the two of us. But now with my son, we need to ensure we prioritize and schedule it appropriately. Do you and your partner create this kind of time together? To my beloved, who will one day hear these words, your patience with my growth, both professional and personal, has been a gift and a mirror. Your trust and support in walking this path with me means more than you could ever know. What you deserve to hear, far more often than I say, is just how much you mean to me. It is beyond what words I have to express it. You are the foundation of all that I am capable of, and the life we're building together for our family and our future is what I am committed in service to. While I may slip and allow old patterns to resurface, I will always find my way back to a more firm and stable place. I will never stop doing the work, never give up on building a relationship where both of us feel consistently seen and valued, especially during challenging times. I may stumble in showing my love, but I am eternally devoted to loving you better. The space between my intentions and my actions lies the most honest work of my life. It's a work I commit to continuing, for you, for our son, and for the man I aspire to become. For the fathers reading this who recognize themselves in my confession, you too can repair the wounds that exist in your relationship. Our withdrawal isn't a personal failure. It's an invitation to resolve a deeply conditioned masculine response that we've inherited and that we may pass on if we don't interrupt it. Your children are learning how to be in relationship by watching you navigate yours. The greatest gift we can offer our children isn't financial security or educational opportunities, though those certainly matter. It's the lived example of a man who knows how to remain connected through difficulty, who can name his failures without shame, and who prioritizes repair over his pride. We're showing them that relationships can bend without breaking, and that if breakage is inevitable, that we can remain composed and connected in the face of it. The most humbling truth I've faced in fatherhood is that all my experience with somatic awareness, all my writing about mindful parenting, doesn't make me immune to the very patterns I help others identify. The gap between knowing and embodying remains the most challenging terrain. To the reparation of your most meaningful relations.